Welcome everyone to the second episode of the Grindstone Guide, College Edition. I'm VOLTZ and I'm joined by Piscaro DB. Today we will be going over my story and my life in college and what led to me to where I'm at today. Let's get right into it.
Let's get right into it. For those of you that didn't watch the first one, we covered the background of my life in college, and so essentially we're flipping the roles here. So I'm going to be asking the question, VOLTZ is going to be giving us a little insight to his college experience. So before I even start with questions, tell everyone where you went to school, like what years you were there and stuff. Give that basic info.
Sure, man. So I graduated high school in 2014, and my story is a little interesting. So I ended up going to 4 different colleges. So starting out, I went to a very small Christian university called Southwestern Adventist University close by Fort Worth, Texas. I kind of grew a little homesick, so I decided to go back home, and I went to a community college called Kilgore College. I graduated from there in 2016 with 2 associate's degrees, and then I decided to go to Texas A&M in Texarkana, Texas. I went there for 2 years, majored in business administration, graduated from there in 2018, decided to work in human resources for a little bit, and then a part of me just really wanted to go back to school, believe it or not, so I ended up going to Texas A&M University, which is actually the shirt I'm wearing today, because it was my dream school. I had always wanted to go there, and so I said, why not? Ended up going to Texas A&M University during COVID, so 2020, and I graduated in December of 2022 with my master's in sports management.
All right, see, I didn't even know that you had gone all the way and done the whole master's route. So that's very interesting. That, I mean, you kind of got, I guess, comparing to me and probably a lot of other people, rather than just like, all right, graduated high school, this is the college I'm going to. I went there for 4 years. That's it. You got the whole. You went one place, then you ended up going to community college, and then you went to another, then you went to your dream school to finish things out with your master's. Like, that's a really cool story. So my first question, and I think this is an interesting one to ask, because I feel like the answer varies based on like the generation that you're from, and we're close enough in age that I feel like we'll have a similar answer, but I want to hear your thoughts. So when you graduated high school, was it you wanted to keep going in education? Like you wanted to keep learning? Or was it more like you felt that next step in life was, all right, I finished high school, now I got to go to college? Was it more of a choice, or did it feel more of like, I kind of have to do this?
Man, that's a great question. So I guess the norm, right, is you graduate high school, you go to college, you go for the 4 years, and, get whatever degree that you're wanting, right? So I would say, like, my parents did kind of push the college route, but I would say a part of me did really want to go, just thinking about, maybe what I wanted to do for work one day. Of course, that changed a lot throughout college, but yeah, I would say there was a part of me that did want to go to college and learn and experience college life. Plus, it was an opportunity, living at home for 18 years with my parents, to get out on my own for a little while. So yeah, I would say I wanted to go to college, yeah.
Okay, and I think, I honestly, I feel the same way for the most part. I think you're right, though. Like, that was, like, the norm, was you graduated high school, and then, all right, 4 more years of school, and then it's on to the real world. And so, it's cool when you hear these stories, especially people that are in, like, our industry, where you hear, like, no, like, I actually genuinely wanted to go to college. And now that doesn't always mean for everybody it was simply because you wanted to learn more and take more tests and write more papers, because let's face it, none of that was fun.
No.
So I wanted to dive in. So now that we've gotten an idea of where you've been to school and the fact that you did want to, did you dive into any like extracurriculars or clubs that were a big part of your life outside of the classroom while you were in college?
Great question, man. My first year in college, when I went to Southwestern Adventist University, I tried out for our basketball team and I ended up making the team. So that was actually a huge part of my life freshman year of college. Only a few people really understand how much time that actually takes to be a student athlete. It takes up a lot of your time. So I was obviously learning college life and how much different it was from high school, but also trying to continue being an athlete like I was in high school. And, I had a part-time job, so I was working at the same time. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I enjoyed it, but I was struggling really, really bad while I was a freshman, just because it was so hard. It took up so much of my time. I had like no time for hanging out with friends. I originally had quit my part-time job. I had no free time and now no money at the same time, so it was it was a real struggle there. So I ended up quitting the basketball team probably like the final month of the season and got my part-time job back and just took up intramural sports. And that became like a huge part of me. So I ended up doing intramurals pretty much at every school that I went to. Most of the time it was basketball, but I would play anything. So I loved sports, always have. That was a huge part. Other than that, it was mainly just working, going to my classes, just trying to learn what I could. Sports was just the biggest thing, man, if I'm being honest. No clubs or nothing. It was no clubs, no fraternities or anything like that. It was strictly intramurals.
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and like, I can't fully relate because I wasn't a college athlete. I wasn't a student athlete in that sense, but I did work with them. I mean, as a basketball manager and then working in football as well, you really did get to see this is no joke. Like, they're practicing, and it's not just one practice a day. There's workouts at different times of the day. Then there's like individual like skills practices and then film session. I mean, that is like an entire life for people. And I mean, I completely understand it in your case why, you had started with it and eventually you kind of had to move on from it, because it really is, it consumes everything about you. And for some people, I mean, it's not worth it, understandably. So another question I wanted to ask you was, obviously, or I guess not obviously for anyone that's watching this, but you're here now. You are is it CMO? Is that your title?
Yes, sir.
So you're the CMO of our organization, of the Greatest Ever TGE. Obviously, you had to have some sort of background within gaming, content, whatever that may be. So where, like, you don't have to go all the way back to like the first time I played a video game or anything like that, but like, when did you first start with gaming? Like, oh, like there's like more to this than simply just I get home and hop on with my friends and, play Call of Duty, or like, when did things start going like, oh, I can like actually go further and further with this, and like, how did that transpire, I guess, through your time in college?
I will say that my first exposure to like professional esports and that stuff was, of course, the early Call of Duty days. So my all-time favorite Call of Duty, and the one that I really started with, was Black Ops 2. And that was when I found out about Scumpy, Nadeshot, Parasite, Karma, Crimsix, all of them that were playing back then. And I would kind of keep up with it. And so part of me, even in high school, wanted to do something like this. But, I was good, but never that good to compete at that kind of a level. And then, of course, I would say probably this would have been around 2016 to 2018 was when, like, the Fortnite era was really getting going, with like Ninja, Myth, who else? Daquan. I think they were just taking over like the Twitch scene, and so that kind of piqued my interest a lot. At that point, I was like, okay, so there's more than necessarily just like the competitive aspect of gaming. There's content involved, right? So now there's like two things floating in my head: content and competitive esports. So it just kind of stuck with me for a long time. I was like, man, I would really love to do that one day. And, I had mentioned, going to school for business administration. And so at the back of my mind, it had always been like, man, it'd be so cool to own and run my own organization. And then ended up going to Texas A&M, majoring in sports management. And believe it or not, that type of degree kind of coincides with a business degree. It's just an emphasis in sports. And esports is becoming more prominent every year, especially since COVID. And, I just finally decided like, hey man, gaming is a passion of mine. And I think I could start something that could really be great. And therefore, met the right people and formed the greatest ever. So
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a hell of a story, and you're right. I mean, you're right. Sports management, or in my case, I was a communications major. It all has different aspects of what it takes to operate a business, run a business, just maybe not so much focused on the numbers and all that, but just the intangibles and all the other aspects. So that kind of helped. That's a good segue for my next question. So I feel like a lot of people that are necessarily not just people that game, but like people that are like, oh, I want to be a content creator, or oh, I want to compete in esports, or anything like that, where they're trying to take gaming a little more seriously than just, like I said, than just hopping on with your friends.
Right.
Where how would you say going to college, or even if it's not going to a 4-year, even if it's just doing community college, like how would you explain the importance in that for someone that's in that process of pursuing those things? Because I feel like a lot of people that are doing it, they think school and all they think is classes and the education part of it, and they're like, there's no value in that. I want to be doing content, I want to have all the time to do content or competing or whatever. Would you say that it's valuable for people that are in that process of getting started in those things to still go ahead and get some form of education and have that social aspect to their life while it's still fresh?
Hopefully I answer this right, but yeah, I mean, I believe education is important. I know, like you said, a lot of people do think it's just, hey, go to class, study to pass the test, write a paper, whatever. But if you look at the true value of education, is it can teach you a lot when it sticks. And so I think it's very important to teach people, go and major in something that you're actually interested in learning about, because that's when it starts really sticking to you. And believe it or not, college and university life can teach you more than just some colleges and universities do offer more hands-on experience. You'd be surprised at the amount of times they'll accept internships in place of electives, and the internship all you have to do is go and get it approved, so it can be almost with anything. It's just got to be relevant to what you're majoring in. And I would say the most important thing about going to college, I say it's the most important, it's very important, but you build relationships, and therefore you build connections for one day, because you never know who's sitting next to you, who's the next, I don't know. I don't even have a good person to say, but just who's the next person to start a business that just blows up, or who's the next person to find a cure for the next disease. It just anything. You can build relationships, you get that hands-on experience, you get, it's a lot more than just going to a lecture, reading a book, studying for a test, or writing a paper. I can't even tell you how many people I've met just from going to college, and especially more recently when I studied sports management. I have so many connections now in the sports world where it can benefit me later down the line. One example is I have a friend that sells tickets for the San Antonio Spurs, and so now he's got sales experience. So on top of I can go catch a game with him every once in a while, he can offer me sales advice, and I've never done sales. I'm not even really interested in sales, if I'm being honest, but it could be very useful one day. I never know when I may need it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of, I don't sell. I'm not in tickets, but I do also work in pro sports, rocking my Carolina Hurricane shirt. We just won Game 2, Round 1 against the Devils last night. But no, you're absolutely right that, or at least when I say absolutely right, I'm speaking opinion here. Obviously, all of this is subjective, but I think you're absolutely right in the sense that, those connections that you can form with, whether it's, the next, person to do the next big thing, or even just other people that share your interests and may want to do some similar stuff that you're doing. I mean, you can learn so much from other people and other people's POV or just life story and whatnot that, I mean, I think it's just one of those things that when people try to say like, oh, I don't need to go off to school and like I don't need that, like you're missing out on an opportunity to where you're by default around so many people from so many different walks of life that you're limiting your social experiences in life and relationship building.
I will say there's one thing that I could talk about, which I'm sure we will definitely cover in another episode, but I did when I was playing basketball. I had a part-time job. I was taking 16 hours my freshman year when I was on the basketball team, which is very tough as a freshman. And yeah, so my mental health was pretty bad at the time. My grades were kind of suffering, but I will say it was a good experience. I learned time management that way. And then once I did end up quitting the basketball team, get my part-time job back, my mental health went up and my grades started getting better. And overall, I would just encourage people, like, that type of life is definitely for a certain breed of people. I found enjoyment through the intramural side of sports. It was just so much more fun. I had fell in love with the game of basketball that way because I did it, and just overall it made my college experience more enjoyable because I had, I guess, just thought like, oh, I have to be on the basketball team, oh, I have to have this part-time job and take this many hours. But when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna seize this opportunity and make it to what I want it to be, and when I decided to just go to school, have a part-time job, and play sports when I wanted to, so much happier. So,
oh yeah,
I'm sure we'll discuss some more about mental health in another
for sure
episode. But that was definitely tough. So I did want to.
Yeah. What would you say that feeling you got when you finally, once you finish your master's degree and you were like, all right, like I'm done with school, I'm ready to start this next phase in my life? How would you even describe that, I guess? Like, what told you like, okay, I'm done with education, let's move on to the next thing?
Well, one, if it's cliche, but it was like a huge weight off my shoulders when I finally was just done, right? Like I was done, I graduated, got to walk across the stage, got my degree, and it was just like, yeah, now I'm truly ready to start working. But everything started to feel right, I guess, is how I would say that. It just felt right. Even leading up to that, it was just like it felt like I was meant to go back to school for my master's. It felt like I was meant to be here working where I'm at now. I've met so many people, and I guess the true feeling was, obviously it was of accomplishment, but it was just like, this just feels right. Like, this is what I was meant to do. And to be honest, I don't really know how to describe that feeling, but it is just a feeling of like, this is what you were supposed to do in life. And
yeah,
no other way to really put it.
No, I mean, it's similar to like when people ask, like, when you're in a relationship and they're like, how did you know, like, you were gonna, like, it was time to propose or whatever. You're just like, I just knew, like, I just felt it in me that it was time.
Yeah.
I feel like you get so much different experiences, and obviously education, but so much life experience, relationship building, and just kind of like you hinted at, and like we'll dive into more in a future episode when we talk more about like the mental health side of things. Like, you really learn how to go through like real ups and downs, whether it be you're really struggling with a class or you haven't quite figured out what major you want to do. You really learn how to like overcome things, and I think those life skills, you're not just gonna get that by being at home, or like, I guess you could learn it like if you went to, if you just ran out of high school, got a job, but it would come in a different sense. Like, I think you just get it in a bunch of different angles while you're in school, and I think that's why it's like so important, and why I vouch for people to go to college, like when they finish high school, because I know it's becoming like more and more like, oh, you don't need that crap, like just start working, or college is a waste. And I feel like obviously there's so many other factors that play into this, financial and whatnot, that again, that's a whole other topic we could discuss. But overall, if you're within the means to do it, I fully vouch for college, and I feel like you would say the same in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think people should do what they want to do, but I just don't think like it has become kind of like the new norm of, you don't need college, you can just start working, you can accomplish everything, which in a sense is true in some cases. Like there are people that are able to accomplish maybe the same things I or you did and not have to go to school. But I do think going to college and receiving an education is important. And if you have the opportunity to go, I highly encourage people go and increase your education, build those connections, try and get those hands-on learning experiences while you're in college, because it can pay off in the future for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for tuning into episode 2 of the Grindstone Guide. Check out the links in the description below to catch all TGE content and all of our social channels, as well as our website where you can see our awesome apparel. The Grindstone Guide really is our way of giving back to the community, sharing our life experiences, and hopefully it's something that y'all can take away from and relate to in some way. If you haven't already, be sure to check out episode 1. That's where I talked about my experiences in college. And again, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.